Yeah, I've been job hunting all afternoon. You know, I remember back in the days when you used to search for jobs by hitting the pavement, and I remember that was a thing. You got to hit the pavement, and you just went from one place to another applying for jobs. There was no online service, and if you went to a temp agency, you actually had to physically go to a temp agency and fill out a bunch of paperwork. Man, how things have changed. Because now, even if you go to McDonald's, if you went to McDonald's somehow, I want to apply for a job, guess how you got to do it? The first thing they'll tell you is you got to do it online. Now, one thing about McDonald's, Walmart, Target, and places like that, they have a computer sitting up front where you can apply for the job. And those are made for people who don't have internet access or who thought they can just show up and get a job, but instead they're going home, they can just apply for it there. And a lot of people, they don't have really good working computers, or, something is wrong where they can't really do what they need to do, so they basically, go to the store and apply. So, things have changed. I mean, it's amazing that just, what is it now, 2012? And internet came out in 1995. I mean, just a little over 15 years ago. 10 years ago. Let's just say 10 years ago. You applied for jobs by going to the location and applying for it in person. And usually you have to get dressed up. You put on some good shoes. I mean, you always put on some good walking shoes. I remember those days. If you had dress shoes, you didn't wear those, but you had a really good pair of good walking shoes because you knew that you're going to be walking up and down streets, going into different places and applying for jobs. I remember those days. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember it was called hitting the pavement. And you had to physically do that. Now, this is how you do it these days. You go online and you apply for the job. And you have to type in a bunch of stuff. Once you hit submit, the final submit button, after going through like 50 million pages of filling out this, filling out that, and the equal opportunity thing that you got to either bypass or go ahead and fill out. Once you do all that, then they usually call you or they email you. Usually when they call you for a phone interview. And you interview over the phone. Then once you get done with the phone interview, they invite you into if they didn't like you over the phone, or they were like, okay, we like this guy, but we need to see him in person. Like at Whole Foods, well, I actually went through Insight Global. But as far as I understood, Insight Global, the other Insight Global contractors apply for jobs, and they had to actually come in physically to do the interview in person. I didn't have to do that. I got accepted just over the phone. Of course, the reason why I got fired, I have no idea still. I can only speculate why I got fired. One thing is, I know this is going off on a different subject here. I didn't feel like I fit in. It was a great place to work, don't get me wrong. Whole Foods, great place to work. The people are nice, and in fact, they're like in the top 10 or top 50 of the best places to work in the United States. So, I'm not going to tell you that Whole Foods suck. I know some companies that do suck, okay, that you don't want to work at. But Whole Foods, I don't think it was the right place for me, and I felt that. But I didn't want to say anything on the V-Laws because I didn't want to lose my job, of course. It was a great place to work, and it was fun while it lasted. And basically, even though they came up with some they told Insight Global that I wasn't producing enough tickets and that I was talking most of the time, socializing most of the time. And I'm like, okay, socializing on my breaks. Let me tell you, every single job I've ever had, my attendance, was near damn perfect. I mean, my attendance wasn't perfect like 100%, but it was near. I mean, it was like 95% perfect. If you graded where 85% is good, mine was 95%. And always on time, never took breaks longer than it was allowed it. Took my 15-minute break, took a half-hour lunch, and then took a 15-minute break. So if I socialized during my break, I had every right to, right? And so the stuff that they told Insight Global as to the reason why they laid me off or fired me did not make sense whatsoever. I was like, what? That's why? Because, I mean, when she told me, because it was Insight Global that told me, it wasn't Whole Foods. They told me, hey, don't show up on Monday. You're no longer needed. I'm like, okay, is there a reason why? I'm thinking that, they did tell me in the beginning that the budget allowed for a few months, but then at the end of the 3 months, which was my allotted contract, they decided to go ahead and let me stay a few more months. So about a month later, I'm no longer working for Whole Foods. So I'm thinking, is that the reason why they didn't? Because they said that they're going to have to review the budget at the end of the year. End of the year to me means like December 31st, but to business, actually, after Thanksgiving was the end of the year. So I didn't see it that way. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe that's the end of the year, right? End of the year, they couldn't find any extra money to keep me employed there. So I'm like, okay, no big deal. Well, it is a big deal because I'm jobless now. So that's the big deal is that I'm jobless now. But that's the reason I thought. I mean, I thought she was going to say something like, well, they have, two other Insight Global contractors there, which they do. They've been there longer than I have. And they decided to keep them, but they really could not justify a third person. Oh, but that wasn't the reason. The reason they gave was totally mind-boggling. I'm like, really? Okay, and I know some employees that actually has been fired before. They'll sit there and tell you all kinds of shit like, oh, they're bullshitting, and they're late all the time. I'm telling you, I mean, and you can believe me or not. You can believe me if you want to. I was on time every single time. I was probably late 3 times the whole entire time. And I called in once, but I made up the time on Saturday. And it was a D-log about that. I was like, hey, I had to take off Wednesday because blah, blah, blah. And then when I moved, I had to take off a day. And then I made it up on Saturday. So, okay. But that isn't the reason because the other guys there took time off a lot more than I did. But they didn't say that. They didn't say it was because of all those times I took off. They said that I was socializing too much and that my ticket volume was not good. Okay, now let me tell you something. I saw my report. My report stated that I was doing 60 to 80 tickets a day. The other guy, just one other guy, who is a Whole Foods employee, was doing like 90 to 100 a day. The other guys were doing like 40 to 60 a day. So I was the second top producing ticket person. And the other person who was doing 100 was cherry picking. Now, if you know what cherry picking means, like he picked all the easy tickets to knock out. And because of the holiday hires at all the stores, and that's what my job was to, you know, activate email addresses, their Active Directory accounts, to assign permissions to different of the all the internal sites. So I had a lot of stuff to assign, and tickets are coming in, and my job was to assign all those permissions. Well, some employees don't need a whole lot. They just need an email address, or they just need a login to a computer. And those scan things, you see people scanning for spoilage. Well, basically, they're scanning to check dates on the products, stuff they need to remove, and the stuff that they remove, they scan them, take them off the shelf, and it takes it off to the inventory. And so some people only need what's called spoilage access. They don't need emails. They're just inventory, basically. And so cherry picking, when a person is cherry picking, this is for those who don't know much about this, a person is cherry picking basically is picking out the easy tickets. And stuff like, okay, the person needs spoilage, person needs email. Now, if a person needs more access, we had to, of course, go through other programs to give them that access. And sometimes it may take a little while to do an entire ticket. And it possibly took about 5 minutes per ticket if the person required a lot of access, and it probably takes about less than a minute if all the person needed was just a simple email. Okay, I'm just giving you like a little quick, scenario here so that you have an idea of what I'm talking about. And I'm sitting there going, my ticket volume is low, so did you guys let go of the other person too, and then keep the person, and then kept the person who was cherry picking? And here's my feeling. My wife mentioned that, I have Asperger's syndrome. That's a mental illness, and that is part of this, that I don't pick up on certain clues that people have. So if I'm talking to someone, and usually a person can look at that person and tell if that other person is interested. Me, on the other hand, will keep on talking. A person who's very close to that is Sheldon on The Big Bang Theory. In fact, he probably has a very extreme case of Asperger's. Okay? Mine's not that extreme, but it's there. It's high. And so maybe I just didn't fit in, but they couldn't really put that on paper as the reason why. Now, I'm a hard worker. I work my ass off, and in a lot of jobs I've worked at, I work my butt off. I mean, I get the job done. I'm not lazy. I do it. I do the damn thing. I follow all the rules, and that's another my problem too is sometimes I follow the rules a little bit too much, and there are some cases where you have to let the rules bend a little bit, and even in the Army, you would think that a person who follows the rules all the time would excel. That's not exactly the case. Sometimes you have to know when to bend the rules, and that's me. Because I'm not able to pick up on certain things, I don't know when those rules could be bent. So what do? I continue doing everything exactly by the book. In some cases, that is not the right thing to do. And this is where I fail. And so I just think I just didn't fit in. And my wife mentioned that. She's like, yeah, I really think that place was a little bit too loose. And it's true. Whole Foods, or at least the department that I worked in, was a little bit too loose on their regulations and rules. There wasn't anything set in stone. There wasn't really that much of a knowledge base. And me, where I worked at University of Phoenix, LifeLock, I'm trying to think of, Microsoft, everything was printed out. Everything was set in stone. You have to do it this way and no other way. And you knew when to bend the rules because that was actually in the knowledge base too. It's okay, in this scenario, you would do this. In that scenario, you would do that. So this is where I think I'm not able to work. Some people are able to work in those situations, and some people are not. And I think that I failed that job just because of that. Not because I didn't do a good job. In fact, they always told me I did a great job there. I was a wonderful employee there. I just didn't fit in. That sucks because I did try to do a damn good job there. Okay, so as you can tell, I'm almost home, so peace out.